Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Brighten Your Perspective, Learning from Your 2022 events to aid your 2023 ones. I'm Felicia Asiedu, Senior Marketing Manager for Europe at Cvent, and I'm going to be talking you through all the goodness that we did in 2022 and some of the failures, we shall say, and just so that you can empower yourself for what you're going to do for 2023 by listening to some of the learnings that we might have. Just going to start with some housekeeping. We want to make this webinar so interactive and engaging, so don't forget to introduce yourself to each other on the chat. It's always good to know who's here with you, and you can maybe share some learnings amongst yourselves. If you do have any questions for us, feel free to ask those questions in the Q&A using the Q&A tab. And we're going to be doing written responses just to show you how we can get back to you whilst we're talking to you, because we've got some good friends that are joining us within Cvent that can help to respond to you whilst we're talking to you. Now, I say we a lot, and that means that I'm not by myself. I'm never by myself on these webinars. I am joined today by my partner in crime, and you'll understand why I say that, Paulina Curto. She is the senior manager. She's not marketing, I'm marketing. She's definitely events. She's the senior manager of the meetings and events team, and she is joining me today on this webinar. Hi, Paulina. How are you doing?
Hi, Felicia. Excited to be here today and talk about all the learnings from the last year.
Excellent. Now, I say she's my partner in crime because me and Paulina plan lots of events together and we have a good time doing it too. So we're coming from that perspective of the marketer and planner working together. And we're going to have a look at what we're doing for 2023. So in our last webinar that we happened to do together, Paulina, we looked at the trends for 23. And as you know, trends are built on a pattern of behavior of what's come before. This means the only way we were able to deliver the trends webinar was to take a look back and make some inferences about what we think might happen in the future. Whereas this time around, what we're doing is we're bringing you an actual look, deep dive back into our 2022 events so we can diagnose the events that went well, and like I said, that maybe didn't, and let you know what we've decided to do in 2023.
Awesome. I mean, that's right, Felicia. We know last year was really seen as another year of recovery, particularly for our industry. And what we did was we flipped the script from using the word pivot to starting every speech with the words in-person events are back. And man, were they back last year and back today.
Absolutely, ridiculously so. I can't tell you how many events I went to where they were like, events, in person's back. It was crazy. I felt like I was either running an event, speaking at an event, judging an award, or at least attending an event like once a week, if not 2 to 3 times a week for quite a prolonged period of time.
Yeah, I mean, and because of that, we have to really think carefully about the experiences that we're delivering to our attendees, right? Our customers, our prospects. And because of the bit of, the double whammy of managing the return to in-person and kind of managing expectations, there was a lot of planner fatigue, right? I can certainly attest to, how many more events can myself or my team manage at one time? There's conflicting and concurrent priorities. Felicia, I can only imagine you were supporting me and we were working together on planning our event program. But like you mentioned before, you were also attending events. What happens when you have an audience full of marketers and planners and they're in the same position? That was us, really. Many of our events are focused on an audience that is really strapped for time, and they're being invited to a ton of event programs while also planning their own events too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was, like you said, that first year of running back to in person. And so there could have been that moment where you're like, okay, everything is just going to be in person. We're just going to make all of our events, live in that sense of the word. But what we had to remember is there was so much goodness from the virtual events that we were running before. Sometimes we 4x'd our attendee numbers because we did go virtual. So we kind of in 2022 were trying to remember, well, hey, things like, for example, our customer success groups, they performed really well virtually, and I think gave people a chance to attend that maybe couldn't through accessibility issues or for whatever reason they couldn't come. They really appreciated that virtual side of things. So one of the things I know we did try back in 2022 was, do we make those client success groups both virtual and in person? We really played around with that. So I know that's a big challenge. That's something people had to think about. Do they stay virtual? Do they go in person? Do they throw it all in? It's really hard trying to think about how to create the right types of event formats for their audiences, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and we want this to be sort of a global conversation. Felicia obviously located in the UK and I'm actually in the States, but I think what we can share is that, we were really managing attendee expectations. We were kind of acknowledging different attendee behaviors, whether they were on site or virtual, right? And so for us, it was really a matter of taking stock of what we've done, years prior and trying to map it to these sort of changed behaviors or changed environments. A big challenge that we were faced with this past year was, what are the drivers for people to come to events this year, meaning in 2022? And it sounded like everyone just wanted to be face to face. It was networking, it was rebuilding, it was relationship building. But we really wanted to also continue to prioritize the content experience. So it was really a matter of optimizing what that attendee experience looked like, whether they were joining us in person or virtually, and marrying those two so that neither audience felt like they were sub-optimized. We're going to get into some of the examples of what we did last year and then what we think we're going to do in the years coming. But a couple things I just wanted to like call out were, designing the right experience for your attendees. And in years past, we've talked about designing this sort of holistic event program. And I think what we're going to get into is not everyone is experiencing events the same way. And there's this sort of personalization that we really want to focus in on. And Felicia, as the marketer, I know you can attest to all of the benefits around customization, personalization around how our attendees, experience these event programs and meetings.
Yeah, absolutely. I always talk about noise. It's one of those key marketing terms of the noise of the market. And it's all these messages coming at you left, right, and center. So we always have to try and do things like you spoke about with personalization, which I know we're going to talk about later, of cutting through that noise and ensuring that you're heard with the events you're designing and the marketing that you put out there. Now, whilst doing our day-to-day job, trying to cut through all that noise, I think we also faced a bunch of trials and tribulations that we didn't actually expect to. It's quite an interesting time, 2022. I think things just kept coming at us left, right, and centre. So we're going to deep dive back into some of those. It's almost those what I wish I'd known then moments. What I wish I'd known when we said that our biggest conference of the year was going to be on the same day as strikes. I think we got that news. And I remember looking at you and you looking at me thinking, seriously, of all we've just been through to design the right event, personalize, all this, that, and the other, now a train strike. And I know we weren't the only ones facing it. We're going to hear now from one of our partners that we do lots of events with, from CNIT, Helen, who's going to explain just what impact that had for her as well.
As the Director of Events for our Haymarket Media Group, over the last year we've had our events impacted by both the tube strikes and the train strikes, and we've learnt from the experience. And what we've actually come to the conclusion is that if your events are valued by your audiences, they will make the effort to continue to attend.
I love hearing that. And Helen speaks about strikes and saying, they will come. We attended Festival of Forums last year when we know they had train strikes happening and they really bent over backwards to try and accommodate people. We saw it was still a great festival. People turned up. We turned up because they really tried their best to accommodate with hotels, with getting you up there the day before. We're paying for no, hold on, couldn't pay for a train ticket as a strike, but they paid definitely for transport. And we definitely did that too. When we had, Connect Europe last year, we tried everything we could. I think Paulina and I were like, right, can we get them Ubers? Can we get them to stay in the hotel? What can we do for these attendees to get there? And some people were lovely. They car shared just to turn up at Connect. They picked themselves up from around the country and came. Because like Helen just said, if the content's good, and it's valued, they will come, and they really did come. So thanks to our attendees that made it to Cvent Connect Europe last year. I know you tried, and we really tried to accommodate you as much as we possibly could. Paulina, I know you were like pulling your hair out at that time.
Yeah, I mean, train strikes are a rarity in the States, but, come to learn how often they happened in 2022, particularly in the UK. It was a real acclimation to understanding something that, the culture deals with every so often. Ride shares in the States are pretty common, but for our programs that we manage in North America, there's a lot of travel involved. There's a typical flight, and then once you've landed, you're kind of in the event conference. You're already there. For Connect Europe, because it's in London, there is a bit more of a fluidity for our attendees to come and go. And I felt like I had to really reframe my mind about, should we be starting content later to afford more people opportunity to get to us in the morning? Should we end content earlier so that they have more time to manage their commute home? So, while there is a logistical impact to the attendee experience, there was definitely some creative processing and conversations happening around, what the content experience and program experience was going to look like from our end. I think, as I think about a similar experience for our Cvent Connect North America event, as a result of recontracting from the pandemic, this past year's event, was contracted in April. And historically, if you know this program, it is in the middle of summer, the hottest months in Las Vegas, Nevada. So it was a real dream hosting this event in April. But, going back to sort of that experience design, that content design, managing attendee expectations, the event was scheduled for April, but the event prior to that was only 9 months before. So we had to really dig deep in terms of what new content can we present that's really compelling to ensure that our attendees come back only 9 months later, as opposed to 12 plus months later. It ended up being very successful. I will say we drew upon, what our attendees had communicated to us, that what was important to them was face-to-face networking, was hands-on training, and was for being inspired for their own event experiences. So we really doubled down on ensuring that we delivered those types of programs and content for our attendees for the North America program.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, like you said, you're in, Las Vegas, the venue really well, you recontract. We had a very similar thing with Cvent Connect Europe. We knew the intercom really well. We were contracted again, but there was also that challenge of, hey, well, people have been there before. How are we going to make this exciting and fresh for these repeat attendees? And I know that's something you have to think about a lot, Paulina, when you're designing the events.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and for event organizers, repeat venues are sometimes seen as a blessing and sometimes a curse, right? The venue inside and out. Your attendees do as well. There's sort of this sort of expectation of, okay, well, it's going to take me 30 minutes to get there in the morning and 50 minutes on the way home, right? There are these nuances that can help shape the attendee experience. But, for someone in my role and your role, Felicia, we're sitting here like, okay, how do we make it exciting for them to come back again? And, we're charged with that across the board, across different event types. It's not just conferences. It can be smaller meetings. It can be, social events. It can be corporate events, right? And so for us, it's all about the partnership, I think. We have really fantastic relationships with, the venues that host our programs. And it's all about reinventing things or reinventing the way attendees experience those venues too, right? So we kind of flipped the script a little bit on our footprint for Connect Europe. I believe we moved the Innovation Pavilion into the most central space of the ballroom. We put general session on one side. Breakout experiences were on 2 floors, so it kind of forced people to create people movement. We put meals on one dedicated space to really ensure that there was like a seamless flow. So as you think about, hosting events at repeat venues, you don't obviously want to flip the script completely, but you want to create areas for iteration to make things more enhanced year over year and create opportunities for creativity as well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of what you're talking about there, we've used the word event design several times. We know that that is part of the design, the ultimate design of your event. I think one of the challenges we have from the kind of marketing perspective is driving that traction before. I mean, they don't even know that you've changed that footprint around and the food stations are in the good place, but no idea. So really, we were faced in 2022 with that idea of, are they even going to come? Because 2022 was that first year where there were practically no restrictions. But we all kind of were talking amongst ourselves in the community of, are we going to get back to like the 2019 level, or are we expecting something more like a 2020 or 21? No idea. So a lot of our sort of designing of the program outside of the venue itself was to attract those new audiences, or to drive that want to be there. With the partner summit that we ran, you had, you know, industry associations and other partners that came, and then we had different types of evening events which were much more local, so that we could entice people that you just come and then you can go to everything. And then, you know, I think we ran the leadership summit. There was just so much more programming that we chucked into it to kind of say, come along, it's going to be amazing. It's one of those things you put a lot of effort into.
Yeah, I mean, the Leadership Summit was a great addition to the Cvent Connect Europe programming. You know, when we were thinking about how to ensure that our attendees come back day to day, we really, really doubled down on the types of programs hosted and on which days. Just to give you an example, for Connect Europe, we knew people were going to show up for our training day on the first day. That is one of the sort of more exciting and hands-on learning types of programs, and that is definitely where we see smaller attrition. But on day one, which is our main conference kickoff, that's typically where we see our highest attendance across the conference. And so what we were thinking to ourselves was, how do we ensure people come back on the following day? How do we make sure that they don't miss out on the content and experiences that we've designed because they've just joined us for day one, the big kickoff day with all the new announcements and some of our top keynotes? And so, to Felicia's point, we designed the program to kind of anchor our attendees to come back. Our leadership summit, inviting all of our industry partners to gather around for roundtable conversations. We hosted our large evening event, our amazingly fun evening event on the final day, just to ensure that we were not only making right on our contracted obligations with the property and with our vendors, but also to ensure that people were coming back and experiencing another subset of the experience and the content that we had prepared for them. So a lot really went into designing the day by day experience to also ensure that people were coming back and that we were, like I said, meeting our contracted obligations with our suppliers and vendors.
Yeah, absolutely. And just this combination of, you know, different people in one place, different events. I mean, that's what we strive for with Connect Europe anyway, is that like ultimate melting pot of everybody coming together in the industry. But we also trialed that last year during the summertime. We were kind of having a hard time finding the right venues at the right price for the different types of events we want to do. And what you can see on the screen here is us collaborating and co-locating different events all together in one venue, which was the W in London. We had the hospitality side of our business, bringing hoteliers together. We had a diversity roundtable here, which I was hosting. And then we had our summer party, where we brought all of those audiences together. People loved it. They loved the fact that they were mixing with different audiences. It was two very serious conversations upstairs, then a lovely party downstairs in the evening. And that's something we learned, that, you know, we can change the format of what we do. Don't have to stick with, hey, it's one venue for one event, but we can just mix it up and mix it all together. And I think that's really helping us to think about what we're going to do this year, because we're going to take some of that goodness that we learned last year, and we're going to think about our event program for this coming year. So we've just shared with you some of those challenges and some goodness, and now we're going to walk you through the change or keep that we're going to do across our total event program for 2023. So Paulina, we've mentioned the total event program a couple of times, and I just thought you could take a moment to explain to people, what do we mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it quite a bit in these webinars, so I'm happy to do a refresher here. But the total event program is really how you structure and organize the meetings and events that you either host, attend, or internal events. So in the next slide, we kind of want to walk through. It's not just about the event format, which is in person, hybrid, virtual, etc., but it's the types of events and structuring them and organizing them in a way which creates clear priorities and helps dictate KPIs and levels of effort to support your total event program. So the way we've sort of structured the second segment of this webinar or conversation, if you will, is talking through the types of events that we support in our total event program, what we've done for them in 2022, and perhaps where we see opportunities or changes that we want to make for each of the different event types.
100%. Thank you for that refresher, Paulina. I know that you can go back and watch previous webinars on the Total Event Program. We do a real deep dive into it, and it might help you to shape some of what you do for this year. So feel free to do that. But let's kick off by looking at the events that we own. And we've spoken about Cvent Connect Europe and Cvent Connect US. And so we're going to really tell you what our plans are. This is a little bit of a under the cover, what are you doing this year? So firstly, you might be excited to hear that we are looking at a very central venue for Cvent Connect Europe this year. If you've come along to any of our Connects before, you'll know that our venue has been a little bit further out. You know, Elizabeth Line always helps, but this time around, we're definitely looking at something more centralized, and that will hopefully help us to mitigate against some of those strikes that we've seen. We're looking at venues that are a little bit, changing their sustainability ways of doing things and trying new options. We're looking at, Paulina mentioned our training that we do. We're looking at how we can maybe heavily discount that or offer complimentary training as a driver. So you might want to look out for that if you see something coming up and think, hey, I want to take advantage of some Cvent training. There's lots of different ways we're thinking about, driving engagement and adding additional programming and content to account for the different conversations that are happening. And we're just trying to kind of rebalance things and get things to work together. All of those programs we tried last year, we're going to try and keep because we think they worked. And people seem to be really engaged. And I've had people even approach me from certain partner organizations saying, hey, can we do that again? What can we add? So there's so much excitement based on what we learned last year. We're not throwing everything out. We're going to keep some, change some, but hopefully use it to create something that will work for our audience going forwards in this year. So stay tuned for that venue reveal, because hopefully we can do that quite soon. Paulina, why don't you take us through what we're going to do for Cvent Connect US?
Yeah, I'm very excited about the venue reveal. There's a whole other conversation that we could have around venue sourcing, but that's for another webinar. I think, something that we're looking at doing as we look at sourcing going forward for the US event is contracting conservatively, right? It's always easier to ask for more rooms to grow your scope of the event versus asking the hotel or the venue or destination to reduce down. That's certainly something that we've learned as a reaction to the pandemic. For the US program, we're actually going to be trialing something different this year. Felicia, you started kind of nodding to it around offering discounted training for the Europe event. This year, we're offering free training. We have just received such glowing feedback from customers who get to participate in our training offerings that we want to make it free. So it is sort of a first come, first serve experience, but it's an opportunity for people to get their hands on the product, get sort of that extra layer of support and guidance in terms of how they can leverage different software or tools to support their programs. But what we're even finding that's a little more exciting is that some people who are not even customers yet have an interest in the training experience as well, right? So there's an opportunity for some of your prospects, if you have a learning and development or training program for your own conferences or events, don't gate it necessarily, or perhaps give guidance around some of the topics or programs that you offer that could speak to different personas that attend your conferences. Speaking of personas, for Connect US, we are getting hyper personalized. Felicia and I talked about this earlier, but we've done a really fabulous job, I think, as a marketing org in partnership with the events team of promoting this event during the event and after the event, right? We've really nailed on what brings the event or what brings our attendees value. And for us, we're trying to get even more customized. And so this year, we're talking about personalization as it relates to the industry you work in, personalization as it relates to the role that you're employed in, personalization as it relates to your interests, right? Are you in the industry? And are you a thought leader? Are you in on the speaking circuit? Are you contributing to chapter events across other industry organizations? So we're getting really hyper personalized and customized as it relates to our pre-event marketing. And then of course, taking all of that goodness and making those experiences happen for those unique subsets of our attendee demographic, right? So it's not just having a first timer attendee networking reception. It's having, if you're part of the MPI regional chapter so and so, why don't you meet other MPI chapters or members of the association on site? We're really talking about trying to extend those conversations that are happening outside of perhaps the Cvent community and making them take place within that Cvent Connect community experience. So a lot is happening. We're really expanding in terms of our marketing efforts, particularly for the US event.
Yeah, I think that sounds awesome. Like when I heard you talk about the free training for prospects, I got very excited, Paulina, because I know from a marketing perspective, my team and I have been talking recently about how do we train prospects? And people have been looking at us sideways saying, why would you even be offering that? And I'm like, because if I was going to buy some new technology, I think I might like to dip my toes in the water in a different way before I buy that technology. So that's another one of those moments where the events team and the marketing team have major synergies in the types of content that we're offering to our prospects, and not just to our customers. And I know that the things that happen in the US are often the things that make us then say, maybe we like that. You're kind of the guinea pig for what we then take on board in Europe. And I love that so much.
That's
Just so
exactly right. We, in addition to just the programming that we sort of pull from or get inspired by for the Europe event, I think what we've done over the last few years and for the US program is we've really created wonderful sponsorship experiences. And, we do host a really large trade show experience and expo experience for the US event. And we've done different iterations of it for the Europe experience. I think we're still trying to find the right fit. But what I think has really, really worked, and we're definitely going to employ and implement in this coming year, is maximizing our sponsors. How do they get the most out of coming to this event? And in return, given some of the macroeconomics at play, how are we able to offset some of the major investments that we see in some of these large scale conferences? I can give you a great example. One of our top platinum sponsors for the US event hosted one of our evening events this past year. And they're basically this unique venue. I'm sure many of you have heard of them, Top Golf. And it was just a really awesome experience. It was something that it wasn't a ballroom, it wasn't a bar, it wasn't a restaurant. It was this unique venue where there was an activity-based experience, a networking-based experience, food and beverage. And, depending on the Top Golf that's nearest you, in some cases, there's a whole other social side to their venue. But what ended up being really amazing with our partnership with them was, we were saying investment in hosting multiple evening events is getting kind of high, right? And they said, look, let's split the cost, or let's find ways to make this affordable for your program. And in return, here's some of the priorities that we're looking to accomplish by way of attending your program. And so through this sort of customized approach, we were able to say, okay, this is what our investment is. This is what the experience is going to be. And then let's see how we can build upon that going forward. Well, needless to say, Topgolf had a really, really positive experience with hosting our event, with some of the deliverables we provided them. They had, a stand on the show floor during the expo. They had a call out on general session stage. They leveraged lead capture across the entire event, being able to scan people's badges and have these sort of transactional and great business conversations, to the point where they said, we want to work with you again next year, but we want to do more. And
Fantastic.
when it comes to that, you're kind of like, okay, let's be really strategic. Let's double down on how we support our sponsors and liaise with our sponsors for our larger conference programs. So, just to give you guys a little bit of insight of how we're thinking about giving them that exposure, they're not going to host a large scale evening event again. Rather, we're going to give them a VIP experience with perhaps some of our leadership summit attendees, have PGA Golf Pro perhaps on site. We're all still sort of ideating off of this, but the idea is that they want to be a part of every single day of the program and not just that one night experience. So they're not only going to have more brand recognition throughout the entire conference, but they're going to have a unique experience for each of our attendees each day. And I think it's just going to help drive both the value of the experience for our sponsor, but also drive really creative new opportunities across our sponsorship offering for the conference. So very excited to see how our partnership with them continues to grow.
Paulina, that is incredible because it brings together so much of what we've spoken about in terms of the personalization, in terms of just kind of going for it and running something that's different and trying new things and taking the goodness of what you did last year but enhancing it and pushing forward this year. I'm super excited about that. If you can get them to come over to Europe, I know we have Top Golf in Europe, in London. So yeah, would be really cool. Just like we did Toka Social last year. Everybody loved it. Such an experiential thing. So would be amazing for Europe. So I'm just planting that seed, Paulina, for you. So events we host, events we attend, internal events, all the different types of our program. Let's talk about internal events. Now, I just got back from America where you and your team hosted the most fantastic internal event I think I've probably ever attended. And I'm not lying. I'm not just saying that. It was mind blowing. And it's because it was full of programming. It was a week full of, presentations, learning about our business. I know we had company wide last year, but it wasn't the same. Like being there in person, totally different from virtual. Virtual was amazing, in person was amazing. I'll get into it. Trust me, audience. You're going to understand why I'm buzzing so much. And this is the impact you have when you do internal events quite well. You leave your employees absolutely buzzing. But I know we changed the date of it this year for reasons that we will explain. Before we get into that, why don't we hear again from Helen from CNIT? It talks to us a little bit about those date changes and the impact.
We also, for example, did move another forum. So we actually moved a forum from the date that had been announced as a tube strike and a train strike, only to find that when we had moved the event, the train strike was then cancelled and was actually then made to be on the same day as our new date. We still carried on. And actually the majority of our audience attended, and we only had a very small proportion of our audience say that they couldn't attend. But what we had found with that event was that when we moved it, those people that were able to make the first date were not then able to make the second date. And it meant that we actually had to restart the promotion and actually advertise and sign up new delegates, which actually meant that it would have been better for us and the delegates if we had continued with our first original date.
I saw that video from Helen and I was like, Helen, oh my gosh, dream come true. Stick with what you're going to do. Come up with a plan and stick to it. I think that's probably one of the best pieces of advice from this webinar. No shade to us. We've got good advice, but this one I just thought was amazing. And I know that when your team probably heard, hey, look, we're going to do our company-wide conference in January rather than February. You haven't got time. Was there a grumble? Was there but we need more time? Or were you like, well, this is the date and we're going to go for it? What did you do, Paulina?
I think it was a combination of both. I think it was, hey, we're moving the conference earlier. And I think it was a combination of, and that's what it is, right? So we sort of just reframed how we thought about the program. I mean, we did have about 6+ months to rationalize it and sort of take stock of what needed to get done. But yeah, I think moving a program, whether it's a month earlier, a month later, multiple months earlier or later, it definitely has impact on the organization supporting that programming. And so we made sure as soon as we caught wind that we would be moving the program earlier, that we reached out to all of our stakeholders to ensure that here are the expectations. The program is earlier, which means due dates and deadlines are earlier. And in this sort of world of digital enhancing in-person events, a lot of content has to be completed and captured well in advance, right? We're not just PowerPoint presentations anymore. There was so much creative video, so much live video, so much performative content, not just sort of speaker presentation style content. So it certainly takes a larger stakeholder base and a larger group to bring these internal events to life, or events to life. But I think for us, echoing what you said, Felicia, internal events are really a C-suite priority these days, right? Creating an exciting culture, I feel like is huge for this sort of hybrid work environment, or if disparate work environment. I think as we looked at the scope of the program, it wasn't just okay, venue content that's happening at the venue, and that's sort of where it starts and ends for the meetings and events org. For us, it was we have attendees coming early on shoulder dates before the event, or staying beyond the event. What are we doing to ensure that they're taken care of? What are we doing to ensure that the first touch point is a positive one? And so while the programming was a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday pattern, we had experiences and meetups taking place on Monday, meetups taking place on Friday. It was all day, every day, and I feel like it ended up feeling like a Cvent Connect conference, a Cvent Connect level program. But with the impact of seeing it on our amongst our peers, amongst our employees. And it was amazing to see how people engaged. I know, Felicia, you have a pretty unique perspective in terms of being in the audience, but having teams that are remotely engaging, but also having peers in the audience who are engaging with you about what was happening on screen or on stage. Definitely want to make sure you share that.
Absolutely. Like I said, I've been at Cvent for 4 years. This was my first time actually, flying over. But last year, I just want to give you a hint of last year, I was a virtual attendee, but as a part of a watch party. So, we hired a small cinema, took all of our Europe-based employees there, watched on the big screen. And there was this sense of togetherness because we were together watching. There was Slack going on all our phones. There was the attendee hub where people were reacting to things that were happening, and we were in all of it. We were kind of having this, in-person moment, virtual watching, Slack, WhatsApp at one point was buzzing, attendee hub, and I was in all of it. There wasn't this, oh gosh, is it Slack or is it attendee hub or is it WhatsApp? I was like, hey, everything's happening, and it was so cool. And we could react and cheer virtually, and it was great. Now this year, I still had that. I still had Slack going. I luckily won a little bit of an award, and I had people kind of
A little award. I need the audience to know that she won Cventer of the Year award, just the highest honor.
which was phenomenal. But at that moment, it's like you've been told you've won, and then I checked my phone. You've got all the Slacks again, the attending, everything was going well done, well done. I felt so connected. I think that's the word I would leave with both the virtual and in-person experience. I felt absolutely connected to my peers in India, in Texas, in France. It didn't matter where they were. I felt connected to them all. And I think that is how our teams left that event. I had salespeople, and this is what you want of your sales organization. They were like, I am ready to get on the phones again and share the goodness of Cvent with all my prospects because I feel it. That is how you want your teams leaving an internal event and going out and doing their job. So if anyone in your senior management team's like, hey, let's cut the budget, just maybe play them this clip and show them my excitement. This is only happening because of you, Paulina. So well done. So finally, events we host, internal, events we attend. I've got to say, this is probably the year that I'm going to enter the trade shows that we attend and conferences with a little bit more confidence. Again, last year, we were very much like, is the audience going to come out? Are we going to get our leads? From Event Tech Live to Confex to IBTM to IMEX, we were just watching and waiting to see if it would be worth our while. And I must say, props to every single event organizer out there on those trade shows, because every single one of them blew us away. And where we were, having that trepidation is gone. So this year we're going to these events and we're going to really attack it and go with our full activations and full stand designs and just give absolutely everything and make it so much more of an experience for the people that come along. That's definitely for the Europe. What are you doing in the US, Paulie?
Yeah, and trade shows have always been a really interesting event type that Cvent particularly, manages. And it's because there's so much trackable ROI, right? It's how many leads did this trade show generate, et cetera, right? There is that sort of very traditional view of attend a trade show, come back with X leads, generate X amount of business. And I feel like for us, we want to, it's not matter of beating last year's volume of leads, but really ensuring that we're creating brand awareness. What are the priorities for each of the programs that, or conferences, trade shows that we're attending, right? And for us, we're taking a step further, more of this personalization, customization conversation that we're having. And it's, of the tier 1 programs that we attend, the IMEXs, the Confexes alike, right? What are we going to do that stands out, that speaks to our brand, that speaks to our solution offering subset, that speaks to how we can help the industry, right? So there's almost like this 3-prong approach. And, we've charged my team with saying, let's do something really, really impactful. And it's this nature of experiential marketing at other shows, at shows that you attend. So is it an in-booth activation where it's something that's going to generate buzz and create brand awareness? Or is it going to be, a happy hour where we're able to do a quick hit presentation on some of the ideas or solutions that Cvent has to offer? Or is it going to be a wellness partnership where we're helping sponsor a run at an event? These are all different ways that, are traditional ways that different exhibitors or sponsors can get involved at different conferences. But for us, we want to take it a step further. We want there to be this layer of personalization, this layer of customization, so that when people do come to our booth, it's not like they're just picking up a piece of swag and saying, all right, I'm going to toss this in my suitcase and, maybe use it one day. Is there a tangible image? Is there some takeaway? Is there an experience that leaves them saying, oh my gosh, I need to do that at my next tier 1 trade show? So for us, it's all about enhanced branding, enhanced activations at the booths. Maybe there's some swag, but it's not just swag that's not worth your while. It's swag that's substantive, that's sustainable, that's thoughtful. And so that's sort of what we're thinking about as we look at our tier 1 trade shows, at least in North America.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing. I mean, we've spoken about taking those marketing campaigns and allowing them to not just live in the digital world and within our marketing teams, but really activating them at events. If anyone has seen our very big eye that we've been using on our stand, they might be like, well, what is that? And that is us trying to, bring our wheel to life. We have a Cvent product wheel that you'll see at every trade show, but we're just kind of trying to take it and make it a little bit more human and give away swag that is then related to that. So if anyone sees some colorful pencils on our stand, it's going to go with the eye, it's going to go with the wheel. So it all ties back in together. And I know when I go to trade shows, I want stuff for my kids to bring home because they're like, well, you've just been away for 3 days. What did you bring me? So we're just going to try and make it something you can actually use at home. And we thought color pencils might go, hey, we'll give it a go and see if it works out. But it's stuff like that. It's just really connecting the dots and making sure that your planner teams, your marketing teams are all aligned and working together so you can really bring things off the page into life, and make sure that you can reuse and take things elsewhere and maybe give things away at your lunches that you have that you would have used at a trade show, and just cross-pollinate across everything that you do. So with that said, we've spoken through a lot of the things that we're going to do for 2023. We want to leave you with 5 key points. So if you didn't, we told a lot of stories, we went around and said a lot of things, but we want to make sure that you have 5 things that you can definitely use this year. So Paulina, I'm going to leave you to start with number one, since you are a total event program expert.
Yeah. So, number one would be organize your events with the total event program structure in mind. And this means think about the events that are in person, virtual, hybrid. This means think about the events that are programs that you host for customers, programs that you host for internal customers, programs that you attend, and think about a number of priorities here. What is the priority? Is it revenue? Is it leads? Is it time to value? Think about prioritizing the different programs. Say to yourself, just as the example that Felicia suggested earlier, our customer success groups, could these be executed virtually? Is the investment for the in-person experience really necessary? Take a really hard, and fast approach at really evaluating your total event program. And then from there, say, these are the tier one programs, these are tier two, these are tier three, and figure out what makes the most sense. What will yield the most return on investment across your programs. I know I just said like a lot of big buzzwords, but really, if you just start to organize your programs in a really digestible way by way of this total event program strategy, you'll start to see your priorities rise to the top. And the things that are less difficult to execute on, you might try to find some efficiencies there, which then start to yield even more impact to your total event view.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely bang on, especially you mentioned the word efficiencies. We know we're having cost of living crisis across the world and the cuts being made left, right, and center. If you can drive those efficiencies, you're probably going to be able to have all the events you want to have, but just in different ways, styles, formats. You just have to really think about it. So with that said, with the cost cutting, don't cut your internal events. Never forget the power of those internal events. They are there to drive change, to drive culture, to empower communication and collaboration, all the C's with your internal events. And I live and breathe it. I was saying to Paulina a while back, if we had just stayed kind of disjointed, a little bit virtual, remote working, I'm not sure how long I could have survived that, because I am somebody that likes to come together, really, throw ideas down on the page, rip them apart, do it again. And you can only kind of do those things when you are given those opportunities to come together. So small meetings are great, but larger internal meetings just amplify that on a much larger scale, where you can come together with business leaders that you wouldn't normally talk to, because you're not necessarily going to put meetings in with those people. I got to talk to people in product, in finance, because you're coming together on that big scale. So don't undermine it, don't underestimate it, and don't cut it out of your programs would be my suggestion there. So next one, take stock of your own plan decisions, Paulina.
Yeah, I love this one. We have so much emphasis on attendee feedback, right? And how it impacts our future event programs. I think similarly, we should take stock on our own event decisions, right? What worked really well last year, what worked or what didn't work that we can improve upon, really the nature of this entire conversation today. So it's a matter of owning up to the failures and embracing the areas for opportunity within your total event program. I think that is just something that we need to remind ourselves. We don't have to continue to do the same thing every year just because it's been done. It's sort of that conversation around the repeat venue. It doesn't have to be the same floor plan. It doesn't have to be the same footprint. It doesn't have to be the same agenda. You can make small tweaks here and there and see radical changes and radical impact. So take stock of the decisions you made previously and kind of weigh them and see what you can, implement in the following year or in your next program.
I'm going to leave you to roll into the next one, because you had such a fantastic example with Top Golf. So how do you create
Yeah,
more value?
I love that. You just mentioned if budgets are being impacted, think about how you can really, lean into your partners, your suppliers, and those potential sponsors, right? Come up with a really integrated, custom sponsorship offering, something that proves impact and brand value for them to be a part of your programs. I can't tell you enough how exciting our sponsorship program is for the North America event. Yes, we have a really, really large trade show experience, but the sponsorship experience can be really, really impactful in terms of managing your budget, your overall conference budget, offsetting costs. And I think there's something there to say we're creating a really customized experience for the attendees by way of these sponsors, but we're also creating something really important and customized for the sponsors who are helping lead and support the industry. I know I gave the example earlier, but I also don't want to step away from scalability, right? If you have a trade show, if there's an opportunity for revenue to be, a revenue stream to support exhibitors or sponsors at your conference, think about it. Think about incorporating that into your agenda design because, as we're seeing budgets cut or having to reappropriate funds in different areas, this is an opportunity that can only help you.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I always think with that sponsorship, I mean, I sponsor events as well, coming from the marketing side of things. And when I see real value is when there is that kind of two-way street. I'm not just paying money for a service, but there's this real collaboration happening between, the organizer and myself. And we have to offer that same kind of opportunity where we provide value to that sponsor rather than just kind of saying, hey, could you invest? And then they don't really see the value because then they won't do it again. So love that piece of advice, Paulina. So I'm going to wrap up with number 5. You've got this. Now, this is the message that we left our internal meeting with. You've got this. We've got this. And I really took it. And I listened to what Helen said from CNIT. I'm not moving my dates. This is the date of my event. I'm doing it. She's confident. She's got this. I just know she was saying, when we move this way and that way, you miss the people that had signed up on the first day. You get some of the people from the second day. You're re-advertising. It's a mess. Don't bother. Just go forth. Like Paulina said earlier with, we were told it's January. It's January. We've got to go for it because when they went for it, they smashed it. I think if they'd still had their, I'm giving you high praise here. I think if they'd still had their kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out kind of attitude of, we wish it was February, it's not really going to go as well. So you've got to really go for it. Go for those trade shows. Put all the activation you want in there. Do your branding full tilt. Just go at it. I think this is the year 2023 where, we're being told there's cuts, but you've got all the creativity, you've got all of the skill set that you built from going virtual and hybrid and everything else. You've had so much chucked at you, all those trials and tribulations. You've got nowhere to go but up. Go for it. And that's the advice we're going to leave you with. We're definitely going to do it. So if you come and see us at our events this year, you're going to really see us go in hell for leather with some of the stuff. You might think we've gone a bit mad, but it's all in the name of trying and risking things and trying new things. And you'll see us at some of those CNIT events as well that you heard Helen talking about. We'll be at the agency event, the forum that's happening for agencies in February. We're going to the Festival of Forums later this year. We're going to the Sustainability Forum. So hopefully Helen stays true and she doesn't change those dates because I've got them set in my calendar as well. So with that said, we thank you for joining us. We're just going to let you know of what's coming up. Thanks for being so chatty as well in the chat. I can see you've been chatting there and there's Q&A happening. But we're just going to let you know what's coming up next. Thankfully, Paulina and I are not on all the webinars. So on the 15th of Feb, join us for everything you need to successfully run your in-person events. On February the 21st, we've got engaging in-person audiences with the Cvent Attendee Hub. On the 22nd of February, we have Cvent Presents, Make Your Customers Fall in Love with Your Events. I love that one. And on the 23rd of February, we've got Bark Up the Right Tree, Align your event marketing strategy to the right promotional channels. I really like that one too. So with that said, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you've got something to take away and trial for your 2023 events.